Welcome to this lesson dedicated to one of the most fascinating and revolutionary periods in European history, the Napoleonic Era. This was a time of profound and often tumultuous transformation, which reshaped the continent in ways that still resonate today. It was an era marked by radical political, social, and economic changes. The driving force behind these changes was the meteoric rise of a charismatic and controversial figure, Napoleon Bonaparte. His impact was incredibly long lasting and extraordinarily complex. This impact manifested itself through a series of victorious military campaigns, changing the continent's geopolitical map. At the same time, we witnessed the introduction of fundamental legislative reforms which laid the foundations for modern law. Napoleon embodied an ambitious and unprecedented attempt to reshape the entire structure of Europe according to his vision. Napoleon Bonaparte's irresistible rise was fueled by a series of brilliant military campaigns that consolidated his power. His innovative tactics and charismatic leadership immediately distinguished him on the battlefield. Among his first and most significant achievements were his victories in Italy. Here, as a young general, he defeated the Austrian and Piedmontese forces, demonstrating extraordinary strategic skill. Subsequent campaigns in Egypt, albeit with mixed results, helped build his legend and propel him onto the international stage. Napoleon was the architect of epic battles, true military masterpieces that went down in history. Think of Austerlitz, the Battle of the Three Emperors, or Jena, where the Prussian armies were annihilated. At every opportunity, Napoleon demonstrated unparalleled military genius, an ability to read the battlefield and make quick, decisive decisions. These qualities allowed him to conquer vast territories in a surprisingly short time. His march across Europe led him to defeat the major powers of the time. His victories not only secured new lands for him, but also unequivocally consolidated his power in France and beyond. His conquests and dominion were not only a matter of military might, but also a vehicle for the dissemination of ideas. Indeed, it enabled the widespread diffusion of the ideals of the French Revolution throughout Europe. Concepts such as the equality of all citizens before the law found new life. Even the ideal of individual and collective freedom, albeit interpreted in its own way, spread beyond France's borders. A key element of his success, and perhaps his most enduring legacy, was the establishment of the Civil Code. This collection of laws is also and more commonly known as the Napoleonic Code. The code was based on far reaching revolutionary principles. Among these was the equality of all citizens before the law, a fundamental pillar of modern law. Furthermore, it consolidated the right to property, considered sacred and inviolable, an essential element for bourgeois economic development. Finally, it guaranteed a certain degree of individual freedom, albeit within the limits imposed by the regime. The Napoleonic Code quickly became the basis of modern law in many European countries and beyond. Its influence was profound and extended far beyond the borders of France. The code shaped and inspired the legislation of several nations, leaving an indelible mark on European and world law. Europe under Napoleonic rule was radically reshaped, taking on a new political and geographical configuration. Napoleon did not simply conquer, but created a vast and ramified empire through a combination of military conquest and astute political alliances. This empire extended across an immense geographical area, encompassing territories from Spain in the west to Poland in the east. Its dominion seemed unstoppable and forever altered the balance of power on the continent. Napoleon did not hesitate to depose existing kings and sovereigns who were now considered a legacy of a bygone era. In their place, he established new vassal kingdoms, often entrusted to members of his family or loyal associates. He appointed members of his family to govern the conquered territories, such as his brother Joseph in Spain or Joachim Murat in the Kingdom of Naples. This strategy served to consolidate his control and spread his influence. This vast political reorganization led to the abolition of many pre existing states, some of which were centuries old. Old state entities were swept away, replaced by new ones. At the same time, new political entities were created, often centralized and bureaucratic, along the French model. These changes forever altered the map of Europe, erasing borders and creating new ones. A crucial and controversial aspect of his policy was the implementation of the Continental Blockade. This was an ambitious attempt to economically isolate Great Britain, his bitterest enemy. The blockade prohibited all European countries under French control or influence from trading with Great Britain. The goal was to cut them off from continental markets and its sources of supply. Napoleon thus hoped to weaken Britain economically, bringing its commercial and industrial prosperity to a halt. His ultimate goal was to force it to surrender and make peace, thus putting an end to its opposition. However, the blockade had complex effects and in many cases counterproductive to its intended objectives. While it partially damaged the British economy, it failed to completely paralyze it. The blockade caused enormous economic hardship in Europe, impeding regular trade and cutting off many nations from essential goods. This generated dissatisfaction and hardship among the population and the merchant classes. It massively fueled smuggling, which became one of the most flourishing activities of the era. Numerous British goods continued to arrive in Europe through illicit networks. This blockade only fueled dissatisfaction with Napoleon's rule, making his policies increasingly unpopular. Its often forced application contributed to the sparking of new conflicts and wars in various parts of the continent. Many of Napoleon's military decisions were dictated by the need to enforce the blockade. The implementation of the blockade led, for example, to the invasion of Spain in 1808, a bloody and costly conflict that exhausted French forces. But above all, Russian resistance to the blockade was one of the main causes of the disastrous Russian campaign of 1812, which marked the beginning of the end for Napoleon's empire. The Napoleonic era, as we have seen, was a time of extraordinary transformation and epochal upheaval for Europe as a whole. Its impact profoundly reverberated through every aspect of life on the continent and beyond. Napoleon Bonaparte's meteoric rise, his charismatic figure, and his unparalleled military genius had a lasting impact on history. He shaped events with extraordinary power. His military campaigns, punctuated by victories and defeats, redefined the geopolitical map of Europe for decades. His strategies are still studied today in military academies around the world. The Civil Code, or Napoleonic Code, represented a legal revolution with lasting impact. It laid the foundations of modern law, influencing legislation across the globe. His ambitious attempt to reorganize Europe according to a single imperial model also had a lasting impact. Although his empire did not survive, its structures and ideas left their mark. Napoleon left a complex legacy of reform and oppression, progress and destruction. He is a figure who continues to divide historians and public opinion. His legacy is also deeply controversial, as his genius was mingled with a thirst for power that led to millions of deaths. His reign was an age of bright lights and deep shadows. For all these reasons, the Napoleonic era continues to be studied with great interest and rigor in every academic field. Its dynamics and protagonists fascinate and question. Every aspect of this period continues to be analyzed, from historians to economists, from jurists to political scientists. Each seeks to grasp the nuances and long term consequences. The impact of Napoleon and his era on European and world history is undeniable and enduring. It's a legacy that still shapes our world today, making his story an inexhaustible source of learning.